Hello and welcome to Culture Vibes, the Federal's special program in which we talk to writers and artists about their work. Joining me today is a very special guest, former diplomat and author Vikas Swarup, who has written this scintillating new thriller, social thriller, just called The Girl with the Seven Lives. This is the cover. Welcome to this show, Mr. Swarup. It's lovely to have you with us today. Just at the outset, if you could give us a sense of, this is a thriller that comes after about 11 odd years, right? And you are somebody who wrote, of course your novel was adapted for Slumdog Millionaire, and you just told me that, you know, it's a cross that you have to bear as a writer. And I wanted to ask you, how long has this been, this novel been traveling with you, and what was its conception like, if you could give us a sense of that?
Thank you, Nuvaid. First of all, it's a pleasure to be speaking to you and to be speaking to the readers of the Federal. So this novel, as you rightly said, comes after a gap of 11 years. My last novel was called The Accidental Apprentice, and that came out in 2013. And now I'm coming out with The Girl with the Seven Lives in 2024. So off and on, the plot of this novel has been in my head for, I would say, maybe 6 or 7 years. But I just did not find the space to start writing it because, you know, I was very busy in a day job. I was a professional diplomat for 35 years. I retired only in 2021. And I think it was only after my retirement, you know, and after the pandemic has subsided and, you know, the world was, what should I say, in a safer place than it was during the pandemic. That's really when I started seriously to tackle this plot line. And Debi's character, the girl with the seven lives, for me, it's a journey of resilience. It's a journey of reinvention. You know, constantly she has had to reinvent herself. And for me, it was very exciting to conceptualize of a strong-willed protagonist, a woman character, you know, who's actually born in the slums, but yet who pulls herself by her bootstraps and is not willing and is willing to sort of accept any challenges and does not give up hope. So I hope readers will also relate to her journey and will follow it right till the very end.
Absolutely. Something that really, as a reader, struck me the most was how you begin the story and how there are, of course, there are 7 lives, so there are 7 stories. And each of them stand out for, you know, the way you sort of interlink them. So they stand out as a story in themselves, but also the way you have worked on the flow of the prose and how you have interlinked each of these stories every time that she has to reinvent herself is very, very fascinating, and the way you have done that has come out really wonderfully well. So if you could tell us a little bit about how it took for you to, you know, to work on that, you know, the structure of the novel and also the flow of the prose.
No, thank you. I'm glad that you appreciated the structure. You see, I call my novels social thrillers. A pure thriller is one where the plot is everything, and once the plot is revealed, you have no more interest in that particular novel. But I write social thrillers where, apart from the thrilling elements of the plot, there are also deeper social issues that I want to explore. Yes. You know, the nature of fame, for instance, what happens in girls' observation homes, the whole fake degree racket, the lure of godmen. You know, all these are themes which we see happening all around us. And somehow I try to weave them into my narrative, because all my novels, when they are written at that particular point in time, they are in a way a snapshot of contemporary India as of that particular point in time. So I wanted my new novel also to be a snapshot of contemporary India. And that's why it was important for me to pull in all these various threads. Yeah. I always believe that India is the most complex country on the planet, and it operates at several levels and several layers. Yeah. So a unidimensional narrative will give you a very, very limited insight into India. Whereas a multi-layered narrative, you know, a narrative where you are traveling from Delhi to Punjab to Kerala to Goa to Mumbai, you know, that kind of a narrative will give you a slightly more layered, a slightly more nuanced portrait of India, because, you know, India changes every 200 kilometers. Yes. As they say, the food changes, the dress changes, the language changes. And that's why, you know, her journey was very important. But at the same time, I wanted the journey to feel organic. I did not want that the reader should feel that I'm just parachuting her from Punjab to Kerala or to Goa. I wanted her journey to feel organic, because, you see, she's a person who's trying to create a better life for herself, as all of us are trying to do. But fate and circumstances conspire to sort of pull her back every time. And then she has to once again pull her up by her bootstraps and start anew, in a new place, in a new setting. And how she succeeds in her many avatars is really the crux of this whole novel.
Right, right. The novel has been published by Simon Schuster, and I wanted to take you to the beginning of the novel. She is held captive by a strange man who is hell-bent on, on the fact that she tells him the truth and the absolute truth, and her life sort of hangs on, the way she tells her story. And he tells her that, you better make it interesting and engaging for that story. It reminded me of, I was telling you, of Arabian Nights and Scheherazade, how she tells a story every night or spread over 1001 nights. And here the story is about just one night. So she has to tell a story, every sort of hour maybe, and you have the chapters are named after hours. So whenever she starts telling the story, you have that, and
yes.
and also the name that she acquires a different name altogether. So you have the chapters name after the particular name that she acquires. Give us a sense of how you worked on it, and also the fact that her reinvention that happens across these chapters.
So I'm glad you referenced Arabian Nights, because that was exactly what I was also thinking of. I would call it it's Arabian Nights meets Slumdog Millionaire. Because you see, the structure is similar in a sense to Slumdog Millionaire, because in Slumdog Millionaire there's a quiz show happening, and there is the backstory happening. And here also there is the fact of her being held hostage by a gunman, and he is putting her life up for an auction, for an online auction. Whoever bids for her life, he will transfer her to that person. So there is that happening, and there's the backstory of each of her 7 lives. So that's how that's why I said it's Arabian Nights meets Slumdog Millionaire. Because like Arabian Nights, it is a story over one long night where she is recounting her entire life story to this stranger, this masked gunman who's threatening to shoot her dead. So her life depends on it, and she has to tell an engaging and interesting story which can hold this gunman's attention. At the same time, she is reliving her past. Her 7 extraordinary lives, how she went from Delhi to Punjab to Kerala to Goa to Mumbai, and what all transpired during each of those lives, and what all she did to survive. So the idea was, we don't want to reveal too much, because I would like the reader himself or herself to find out her 7 extraordinary lives and get immersed in her amazing journey, which I hope is a journey that every Indian would be able to relate to, because really it's a journey of redemption. And the important thing I wanted to show is, it's not important where you are coming from. What's important is where you are going to. So it's an aspirational journey in that sense.
Yeah, what you make of yourself, right? So we were talking about the themes of the novel. I mean, it's, in many ways, it's a contemporary Indian novel which has a lot of resonances, that we can relate to. And we were talking about the holy men and how this sort of the fake degree issue, and since this novel is also set in different parts of India, Punjab, Delhi, of course, Delhi NCR, Punjab, then you go to Kottayam, Kerala, and then Goa. So all these things in a way give you a sense of what it takes for somebody like her to live in India of today, and to come across all those people who the rich, of course, but also people from a different
social strata also. Yes.
Tell us a little bit.
So for this you have to credit my research. I mean, I have never lived in Kottayam, I have never lived in Goa, I have visited Goa, I have never lived in Mumbai, I have never lived in Punjab. But the great thing about writing a modern day novel is, you have resources available. You have Google, you have online searches and things like that, and you can read up about these places to get a feel for it, to understand what makes it tick, so to speak. So I did a lot of research. Of course, I had to research the whole Godman racket. I had to research, the fake degree racket. I had to research what goes on in a girl's observation home. I had to even research manicures and pedicures, because at one point in time, Debi is working in a beauty parlor in Mumbai. So from that point of view, as I said, it was important for me that the backdrop should be authentic. Each of these places that she is visiting should feel authentic, because, after all, this is meant for readers in India. And, a reader in Kottayam should not say, hey, this is not what Kottayam feels like. Or a reader in Goa should not say, this is not what Goa is like. So, as I said, for that, I would just give credit to my research.
Right. And also the fact that, the title of the novel, that this seems to be like a international trend of sort. I mean, we had, of course,
Stieg Larsson's into the whole Millennium Trilogy, Stieg Larsson.
Yeah. So was that kind of deliberate? You thought about it and then you...
Well, I think this title came to me, just on its own. I didn't have to even think of... Yes, because, it could have been a girl with 7 lives. But it is the girl with the 7 lives. I want to make it specific that, it is Devi, she is the girl, and this is a girl. It could be a girl with, anybody who has gone from one place to another. But, and that's what happens when you move from one job to another. But then your whole identity does not change. You still are the same person. You are just putting something new in your resume. But here, she has to actually reinvent herself every 3 years almost, as she moves from one place to another. And that's why it is the girl with the 7 lives. And I think my publisher, my agent, they all loved the title. And that's how this title has now finally appeared in the hands of readers.
Great. When she's kidnapped from the beauty parlor, she's 25. And if you look back at her story and the story that she tells through these 7 chapters, those stories are so fascinating that as if you have lived a lifetime, because primarily because the kind of experiences she has lived. Somebody who was raised in the slum, and also somebody who had to cope with the losses of the family
she
members.
becomes an orphan at the age of 8.
An orphan at the age of 8.
She loses her parents, she loses her brothers. She's just all alone in this world.
So it's also in a sense coming of age. Yes. Novel, do you see?
Yes, absolutely. I think you have very rightly said. I do look at it as a coming of age novel. I would also call it a very feminist novel, in the sense that Devi is someone at the very beginning. She says she knows what it means to be a woman in a world ruled by men, and she has seen all kinds of men, from chairmen to godmen, and that's why. And she believes very strongly that men believe that they control the world because they are men, simply because they are men. And that women, have a different place in society. And she challenges that preconceived notion, because she believes that she is equal to anyone. And she tries to show that, through her many avatars as well. Yeah. So I would say, yes, it's definitely a coming-of-age story. Because you see, Devi is also searching for her own identity. Yes. At the end of the day, as an orphan, growing up without any support system, she's constantly searching for her own identity, what it means to be a woman in a world ruled by men. And finally, I think she comes to peace with that what she wants to make of her life, where she finds her true destiny, so to speak. Yeah. So again, without revealing too much, I think readers should find out and come to the end of her journey to find out how she discovers herself.
True. And also found it to be, like a very aspirational and inspirational story on multiple levels. That if you look at her story, where she comes from and what she makes of herself, in the end of the novel, again, no spoilers here, but it's very fascinating. We talk about, when it comes to thriller, there is always, it's very tricky that you don't sort of give away too much early on in the novel, and you held on to certain things and you do it very well in this novel. So to give the readers a sense of the prose, how you worked in the prose, would you read a little bit about, from wherever you...
Okay. So let me read from one of the earlier chapters. In fact, the very first chapter, when she talks about her life in the slum. Right. So I'm talking about a particular phase in her life, again without revealing too much, where suddenly her very, very low income household acquired some goodies like a television, and she's talking about how the television, getting a television, a 14-inch Oneida television, how that transformed her life.
And that is where you bring in surrogacy.
Yes. So I'll just read out a little bit of portion of... Television is the greatest thing ever invented. At first, it enchanted me. Even the all-knowing Rajinder is her brother, couldn't explain to me how pictures and sound appeared on that screen inside our house. It could only have been magic. Then I became completely addicted to it. That screen became my window to the world, and I would sit for hours watching even the most insipid programs on farming and classical dance. The only grudge I hold against television is that it made us believe in impossible dreams. We started imagining we could also have lives like those rich families whose intrigues and ambitions were the stuff of the daily soaps. Till now, we had only glimpsed the mansions of the super rich from afar, those fat cat millionaires living in the exclusive gated colony of Sector 1, their bungalows screened off by high gates and armed security guards. TV gave us a peek into life behind those gilded gates. we liked what we saw, and we hated our world even more.
Wonderful. That's lovely. So that will give the readers a sense of what the prose is like. And of course, for more, you can buy the book, read it. It's absolutely a rewarding read. I wanted to bring in, the setting of the novel. In a sense, that is also the setting of Q&A, that is Slumdog Millionaire.
Yeah, Slumdog Millionaire actually also starts in Mumbai. Ends in, in a way, the journey of Ram Mohammed Thomas starts in Delhi and ends in Mumbai. And Debi's journey also starts in Delhi and ends in Mumbai, so to speak.
So this is, of course, a territory you are familiar with as a writer, that you have drawn on and you have inhabited that kind of space as a writer. But I wanted to ask you, how in some ways, when I think, not so much the novel, but the film was also, the critics would say that it's poverty porn, and especially when it comes to, a Western filmmaker making film based on India. What was your sort of response to that? Yes,
that was a criticism that was leveled against Slumdog Millionaire when it first came out. In fact, the Slum Dwellers Association of India even filed a lawsuit against the film, and they included me as well. And I had to tell them that, look, my book was called Q&A; it was not called Slumdog Millionaire. So why are you involving me in this? Because they alleged that by calling their film Slumdog Millionaire, they had, in a sense, labeled all the people living in slums as dogs. Of course, it was thrown out, I think, by the High Court. They said, there's no such word called slumdog. But, they didn't give up. They bought 2 dogs and they named one dog Simon and one dog Danny. But look, what I would say is Danny Boyle, when he first came to India to shoot Slumdog Millionaire, that was his very first visit to India. He had never been to India before. And my sense is he actually, shot Slumdog Millionaire with a lot of respect for the people of Mumbai, for the people of Dharavi in particular. I think he was just bowled over by the sheer magnitude of Dharavi. When you see that sea of blue tarpaulins from the air, for him it was a cinematic moment. And yes, some people would say that there is much more focus on the poverty aspect. But I think, don't forget the title of that film, Slumdog Millionaire. At the end of the day, the slumdog is able to overcome the odds and become a millionaire. And I think that's why this movie was marketed as the feel-good film of the decade. And it came out at just the right time. It came out during the global economic depression, when people were losing jobs, people were losing hope. They wanted something which would inspire them. And this film did. And that's why I think this film worked very well. Also, I think it was a well-made product. And it had 3 things going for it. One, the incredible acting by the child actors, who literally, I think, are the soul of the film. Secondly, the amazing cinematography by Anthony Dodmantle. I mean, he takes a handheld camera and he goes into the alleyways of Dharavi, and it's a very tactile feeling that you get when you watch that film. You really feel you're in those claustrophobic alleys, chasing those boys. And finally, I think the amazing music, the brilliant musical score by A.R. Rahman. Which again I think elevates the film to a different level. And I think Danny Boyle's genius was that he was able to put together that package very beautifully. I mean, I cannot recall of any film which won 8 Oscars where not a single Oscar was nominated for the acting awards. No best actor, no best actress, no best supporting actor, no best supporting actress. And yet it won best picture, best director, best screenplay, best sound design, best so many other things. So I think it was a well-made film, which came out at the right time. So at that time, India was growing at 8 to 10%. There was a worldwide curiosity about what was making India tick, what was making India grow so fast. So it also filled partly that vacuum about information about India. People wanted to understand what modern India was about. Because till then, the image they had of India was of the India of the Raj, of palaces and yoga and Maharajas and elephants.
Snakes.
This was about the underbelly of urban India. And in a way, this book is also about urbanization. The very opening of this novel is in Delhi NCR, and she's in that sprawling slum, and next to it is a huge township called Wish City. So in a way, it's about urbanization, how private developers are now building urban India, and how urban India is, in a sense, what should I say, colonizing rural India.
Yeah.
And then, how the livelihoods and wages and lifestyles are affected and impacted by that particular choice.
So as a writer, of course, you would want to move on from a particular kind of mold,
Sapna Sinha, who was the protagonist of of The Accidental Apprentice, she's firmly middle class.
Yeah.
Whereas Devi of this novel is firmly lower class.
Lower class,
So I think that's the social strata difference.
True.
Straight away.
True.
And that's why her language is slightly coarser.
Yeah.
Sapna is more sophisticated. She's a BA graduate in English literature. Devi is uneducated. She's never gone to school, so to speak. So she has really picked up, whatever she has picked up from her life experiences.
Yeah, life teaches you a lot.
Yeah, life teaches, exactly. Exactly.
So also reading this novel, Vikas, one gets a sense that, you're somebody who is also very, very attuned to the lives of people across the, divide. So you're writing about the rich, but you're also writing about the poorest of the poor. And this is writing with, equal flair in a sense. How do you manage that as a writer?
Look, I mean, at the end of the day, you have to take that leap of faith.
Right.
And I always believe in that quality of empathy, that you have to put yourself in the shoes of your protagonist.
Yeah.
You have to look at the world through her eyes. So here there was a double disadvantage for me. I mean, first of all, you have to look at the world through the eyes of someone who's totally disadvantaged, who doesn't even have a roof over her head, who does not know where her next meal is going to come from. She's a beggar actually. For a time she's a beggar begging on the streets. And the second disadvantage comes as a male writer. You're writing from a female perspective.
Yes.
So the world, I think, looks very different from a female perspective than it looks from a male perspective. And you have to be careful about what are the visual cues that a woman would pick up that a man would not? Because, when you're walking down the street in a dark place, I think a woman would be looking over her shoulder, whereas a man would not be. So you have to really put yourself in the shoes of that protagonist. Try to imagine the world through her eyes and then write from that perspective.
Right.
And I think that's the joy of fiction, that you can appropriate any character that you don't own.
Absolutely.
As long as, you are sincere, you put your heart and soul into it, and you really have that quality of empathy.
Right. In India, we tend to, make a lot of fuss over genre, and I think for a lot of writers, it's totally immaterial. It's about telling a good story in a as good a way as possible. How would you look at these genre debates?
Yes.
That
No, that's a issue that crops up quite often with my novel. I mean, my novel Six Suspects, for instance.
Right.
I mean, technically speaking, you would call it a murder mystery, but would you just put it in the murder mystery column? It's it's a very different murder mystery because it's really about the backstories of these six suspects, each of whom is occupying a different strata of society. There is a Bollywood actress. There is a mafia don who's masquerading as a politician.
Yes.
There is a mobile phone thief. There is Larry Page, who comes all the way from America. He's a forklift driver from Waco, Texas. There is a tribal from the Andaman Islands, and there is a ex-bureaucrat who's one of the most corrupt bureaucrats in history. So there are six different people who are all telling you their stories through their own unique voices. One is a diary entry, one is just a telephone transcript, one is a first person, one is a third person. So to classify it just as a murder mystery is really dumbing it down. It really is much more. So that's why, it really crosses genres. And similarly, I would say The Girl with the Seven Lives. Now, from the cover, you would think it's a classic thriller story.
Right.
But that's why I said it's the social thriller, because, there is a deeper meaning, just if you go under the surface, then you will look at, some of the issues that I have touched upon in the novel. Right. And I hope those issues resonate with the reader even after you have turned the last page. Absolutely. And that's the difference between an airport thriller and a social thriller.
Exactly. And also the element of literary novel in it, that, even though it's a thriller, there's a sense that you get that, in terms of language, the way you write, that also makes a lot of difference that,
Yes, and also, the inner exploration of her own psychology.
Yeah.
Her own thought processes, I mean, I want you to get acquainted with Debi and her worldview. How does she look at the world? What is her sense? Her attachment to her dog Sheru, for instance.
Right.
So the idea is to also bring in a lot of emotional intensity into the narrative, so that you really feel for her, and you really feel her joy, you feel her sorrow, you feel her smile. That is... that is, as a writer, what I aim for.
Right.
And if the reader also agrees with those emotions and is able to express those same emotions that I wanted him or her to express, then I would have succeeded.
Right. We tend to make a lot of, read too much into the fact that, you write what you know best. And, there have been people like Upamanyu Chatterjee, for instance, who has written about the world that he is familiar with and continues to write. Of course, his last novel, I think, came out last year, I think. So I want to ask you, you did not feel tempted to, did not ever feel that temptation to write about the world that you sort of inhabit?
In that case, Nuvaid, I should have written a spy novel starting in Cairo, maybe going to London, ending up in Washington DC, you know, with a plot that involves the nuking of Los Angeles or something like that, you know. But you know, somehow that did not appeal to me. And you said, you know, this old adage that you write best what you know best. I know India best. You know, even though I don't know all of India, but you know, I still feel that, you know, I do understand, you know, what makes us unique as Indians, so to speak. And that's why I try to write from that perspective. And for me, you know, it's these everyday stories that are playing out. You know, you read one day's newspaper, you know, or you watch just 5 episodes of The Federal, and you will get completely 5 different perspectives of India. You know, the south of India is very different from the north of India. The east is different from the west. You know, the upper class, their lives are very different from the lower classes. And that's why, you know, because we are a nation of 1.4 billion people, I think we are also a nation of 1.4 billion stories. So why look for stories outside India when there are 1.4 billion stories playing out right in front of our eyes in our very great nation?
Absolutely. That's very well said, Vikas. When do you write? When do you feel the urge to write? How does it work for you? You know, I'm talking about craft here and the process of writing, that you have a story that you want to tell, or how does it work for you?
So for me, the writing always has to be related to this particular question. Do you have a story that only you can tell? You know, I mean, New York Times, they did a survey a few years ago in which they discovered that 81% of Americans told them in the survey that they have a story inside them. But very often that story should remain inside them because, you know, it may not be really relevant for a larger audience. So everybody feels that their grandmother's story is very important. But you have to then first of all decide that what are the elements in that grandmother's story which will appeal to a larger audience beyond your immediate family. So for me, that is the touchstone. Do I have a story that only I can tell? Do I have a story worth telling? And I felt that Devi's story was worth telling. You know, as I said, it's a story of resilience, it's a story of reinvention, and eventually it's a story of redemption. And I think that is a theme that is common to all communities, all cultures, and that's why I hope this will resonate with readers across the board.
Absolutely. And also this link to this question only, this visual element of your writing, that, you know, that when you read it, you actually you know, imagine it in your mind in a way that, you know, perhaps when you watch a film, that it's all unfolding before your eyes. And I wanted to ask you if that's something that is, you know, there at the back of your mind.
Yes, I mean, it's not at the back of mind in the sense that I'm writing this and I'm thinking, oh, tomorrow this will be a Netflix series or it will be a film, so I better put in. No. I think I have a very visual imagination that I first imagine a scene playing out in my head before I write it on the page. And that is why when people want to transfer my book into celluloid, into a film or a web series, they find it very easy because, you know, it's a very visual writing. The writing style is very visual. They can already, as you read the words on the page, you can visualize it in your head, just as I visualize it in my head before I committed it into page. And that's why I suppose the transition becomes easier. But look, what I write is a book. I do not write a screenplay. If a filmmaker feels that my book is compelling enough for them to convert it into a film or a web series or whatever, then you know, they are welcome to try their hand at it. I have no objection to that. But the soul of my novel must always be preserved.
Absolutely. That's again very beautifully said. And on that note, Vikas, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you. This is again the cover of the book. Readers can look up on Amazon, wherever they can buy the book. Read it, relish it. You will really get a sense of what it takes for a poor girl to sort of grow up in India of today, navigating so many things, you know, and we meet so many memorable characters in the novel. This is a novel that is certainly going to stay with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you.